House is a very, very, very fine house with two cats in the yard. I used to be
Alexa,
so
stop. Well, welcome
Well,
to our class on CMA.
E.
And if you heard the theme song, I don't know how well it came through, but everybody thinks their house is a very, very fine house. And that's what makes CMA so challenging, doesn't it? We are going to go through the process of using the CMA wizard in Matrix. Some of you have taken the full CMA class. I do a full class on CMA that's about 3 hours long. And they have one down at RAR that's 5 hours long, because when it comes down to it, doing a CMA is a large task. And it should be. I've known a few people over the years in the real estate business who have been in the business so long that they can ride by the outside of a house, know what's inside, and give a very good ballpark estimate of what a house probably should be listed for. None of those people are in this class today, including myself. And it really is something that takes work. In fact, if you think about it, what you are doing when you do a CMA is you are telling somebody what the most valuable asset they're ever likely to own in their life is probably worth, so that you can guide them through what is probably going to be the single largest transaction of their entire life. Not to put any pressure on you, but that's really what's involved with a CMA. And of all the things that we do as professionals, doing CMA in the right way is one of the most important and one of the most professional things that we do. We're not going to go into all of the details, but when you do a CMA, you should gather as much information as you possibly can about your subject property. And you can pull it from the MLS, you can pull it from tax records, and even other sources. When you look for a property in MLS, if it's been listed previously, there may be a tremendous amount of information there about a house that you probably have never seen before in your life, maybe even never driven by or even been in that subdivision before. And so you can get a tremendous amount of information from the MLS, including history. You can go to the tax records and get valuable information there, including very often current and past mortgage information. And all of that information can be extraordinarily valuable as you prepare to research a property in order to give someone your opinion of value. And remember what I just said, because a CMA is not an estimate of the value of a property. A CMA is your opinion as a professional of the value of the property. And so doing the research and then owning your opinion is a huge part of the process, and presenting yourself as a professional. In addition, the three most important words in all of real estate are location, and I won't say it 3 times, it gets corny after a while, but it's still true. And researching the neighborhood, researching the property setting, researching the market in that area and the market in general, and being able to explain that to the person who might be selling the house is also a significant part of doing a good CMA and presenting a good listing presentation. And there are products connected to the MLS that can help you do that. You want to look at the area around that property and see what has been selling, and see how long it's been selling for, how long it took to close, and what hasn't been selling. You should always look, for example, at expireds, because they get to serve as a bad example in most cases. And you want to be able to know much more about the market in the area than certainly the homeowner does themselves. In fact, your goal is to demonstrate in your research process that you actually do know a great deal more about the property and the market and its settings than the person that owns the house. It's your way of adding value to the process. It's your way of demonstrating your professionalism. It's your way of proving to them that you are a person whose opinion, and it's your opinion, they can trust. What I'm going to do is switch over to the MLS now, and we are very quickly going to go through the overall process of creating a CMA in Matrix. So I'm going to go find my screen here, and we'll make sure that I get the right screen. So does everyone see the Matrix screen with my mouse pointer moving around on it?
Yes.
Nod,
Yes.
thank you. And there's more than one way to start a CMA in Matrix. And as a matter of fact, there's more than one CMA in Matrix. There are actually two. You can go up here to My Matrix, go to My CMAs, which, by the way, is where all of your Matrix Wizard CMAs live. And if I click here, these are all of my existing CMAs. All of them are fake, by the way. And by the way, if you need help with a CMA, I'd be happy to help you with everything except coming up with the price, because, well, that's your opinion. But if you need help when you do this later, feel free to contact me and I'll answer your questions as best I can. In fact, here's your homework. Do not let the first time you use the CMA Wizard be to put a CMA report in front of somebody that you hope to impress and list their house and they will one day give you money. You need to do 3, 4, or 5 fake CMAs and let somebody in your office, your sales manager is best choice, or someone in the office that you work with who is mentoring you, look at your work and go over it with you. You need to do 3 or 4. So list your own house, list your mom's house, your friend's house. I once did a CMA on the Taj Mahal. It didn't come out very well. It needed a lot of work. But you need to practice this a few times before you do it for real. And you want to get to the place where you know the process to the point where you're working on something now and your mind already knows what the next step will be. Every CMA is different. Every process is a little different, but you want to get the process smoothly in your mind. So here we are on My CMAs down here. I can click where it says Start a New CMA, and that will take us to the wizard and open it up and walk us through the whole process. It's actually not where I prefer to start CMAs. Where I prefer to start CMAs, just probably because that's how my brain works, is I like to go to search first, go to single family search, and I like to do my research first. I like to find the information, the properties that I'm going to use for comparables first. It's just the way my brain works. I like to know in advance kind of where I'm going and then walk through the wizard. So that's the way I'm going to do it today. And most of the people I've talked to who do this seem to start here as well. The search is probably the most important part of the process. The wizard is easy to use. It takes you through step by step. The most important thing, the thing that makes your opinion more than anything else, is the properties that you chose to use to determine that pricing, that opinion. And when you do a CMA, you are looking for 2 numbers. You are looking for an idea of what you think it should be listed for, and you are looking for an idea of what you think it should sell for. 2 numbers, almost always 2 different numbers, depending upon how the market is operating. So we're going to start out by looking for some comparables. What makes a comparable a comparable? Well, there are 3 things that make a comparable, and they are the same 3 things that make a CMA a CMA. Number one is characteristics of the subject property. In other words, you are looking for properties that are overall as similar as possible to the subject property in terms of bedrooms, baths, style, square footage, and things like that. You'll never find identical properties. You want to keep those similarities general, only a few things, but you want them to be similar. The second one is one we've mentioned already, is location. You want them to be either within a reasonable distance from the property. Appraisers try to stay within a mile, but that's not always practical, or in similar other neighborhoods with a similar market. And the third aspect of a comparable and a CMA is the marketplace itself, which is determined by time. In other words, you're not just looking for similar properties, you're looking for similar properties within a time frame. Of course, with active listings, you're looking for properties that are active right now because that's your property's competition. These are the properties your listing is going to compete against. And then you're looking for properties that have sold within a reasonable amount of time. 3 months is best if the market has enough going on, 6 months, but you want it to be the way the market is right now or in the very near past. Because remember, the value of a home is determined by what the market says it's worth, not by what you say it's worth, not by what the seller says it's worth. The market determines the value of a home. In fact, did you know that every properly priced property sells 100% of the time, no matter the condition of the market? And someone might say, well, it had this wrong with it, or this wrong with it, or this wrong with it. But that should have all been taken care of in pricing the property properly. It's never the property. The market determines the value, and every properly priced property sells 100% of the time, regardless of the market. Do y'all agree with that?
Yeah.
Good, because it's very important philosophy to build your opinion of the value of a property on. So having said all of that, I'm going to start our process over here by creating a search. And I'm just going to create a general search for a very typical property. In the full class, I like to spend a lot more time on searches because it's a good opportunity to teach people how searches work. But for today, since this is a workshop and it's a summary class, I'm just going to go ahead and create a simple search. But if you come up with a specific question, please feel free to ask it. Probably other people will be interested in the same question. So over here, I'm going to start by saying single family, and we'll do active listings because I did mention that is my listings competition. In fact, I like to ask myself when I list this property, and notice I said when, not if. When I list this property, am I going to show it? And of course I am, because I want to get both sides if I can. And so what other properties right now might I show at the same time as I show this property? That's a good way to think about what you're looking for active listing. And of course I want solds because those are the properties that I'm going to draw actual numbers from. And I can control the time here. I'm trying to get a lot of properties in this search result, so I'm going to leave this on 180 for now. But if I were doing this as a real CMA, I'd probably at least back this down to 90. And I like to include expireds because, as I said earlier, they can serve as a bad example, especially if I can use them to demonstrate that the reason that they didn't sell is probably because they were a little bit overpriced. And I like to even include pendings. Of course, you don't have to do this. I'm just giving you all the options. because those are the ones that people actually put a offer on and it was accepted recently. And so they kind of can reflect what the market is doing in the most immediate sense. So I've got my 4 different kinds of statuses. You always want at least 3 of each status when you do this. You can have more, and you don't want too many because the more properties you put in your report, the more you're going to be talking about it, but at least 3 of each. And so I'm going to go over here. I'm going to stick in my area. I live in area 44, so I'll add area 44. That'll be my location. How else could I handle location? Well, if it was a large enough subdivision, I could go by subdivision, but there are not very many subdivisions that are that big. If I knew of a number of subdivisions very, very similar to one another, I could include all of those subdivisions and use them for comps if it supplied me with the comps I need. But that goes back to it being your opinion, because you would have to know your market area and you'd have to know which subdivisions you could use in comparison to one another. The other way I could do it if I wanted to limit it, of course, is to do a map search and draw a shape or a radius around where my subject property is located. Those are all different ways that you can control the location so that you are either within a reasonable distance or looking at similar market areas. I'm just going to stick with area 44 for now, and we'll put in an approximate price range, because if you did the research I talked about at the beginning, if you researched the subject property and collected all of your information, if you researched the neighborhood and found out what was going on and what was selling and what wasn't, you probably have already been able to come up with, in your own mind, a general range of where you think the price for this property is likely to fall. And I'm going to, again, put in a wider one than I would if I were doing it for real, because I want to have lots of properties to choose from later as we talk about that process. So I'm going to do 190 to 275. That's too wide in most instances. You probably would go narrower than that, but it'll give me enough properties down the road. And just to make sure everybody knows how to do this, because some of the people watching this video may be looking at it and using the MLS for the first time, I'm going to put in my subject property has 4 bedrooms. So I can put in 4 here. If I want 4 or more, I can do 4 minus. There it is. If I want, 4 plus, what am I saying? Not enough coffee this morning, obviously. If I want 4 or fewer, I would put 4 minus. If I want 3 to 4, I would put 3-4. And all number fields work the same way with those 3 symbols. I'm going to stick with just 4 because I'm doing a CMA and I'm trying to stay similar. On the other hand, this property has 2.5 baths. And there's a special way to put baths into matrix. I want 2.5 baths, so I type 2.1. Just write that down. If you typed 2.5, you would be asking for any property with at least 2 full baths and at least 5 half baths, which if baseball starts up again anytime soon, we're going to come to your house to watch the games because there's no waiting at your house. But 2.1 is 2.5 baths in matrix, at least 2 full baths and at least 1 half bath. And notice I'm down to only 8 matches because there aren't as many listings out there right now as we wish there were. And so I'm obviously going to need more than that. So I am going to change my total baths from 2.5 to 1.1 plus. And now I have 39 matches. So you see, you can't, even on the most basic comparable things, you can't always match exactly what you want. And obviously, when I do this, I'm going to have to make some kind of adjustments for some of the differences in this area. Down below here on style, I'm going to select colonial. Let's see what that does to our numbers. Oh, all the way down to 5. So I'm going to hold the control key down and also select 2-story. Now I have 13. And I could go down here and select other styles that might resemble my property, see if it gives me any more properties in my cumulative count at the bottom. Because you have to understand, when you create searches, our members can pick up to 3 things off of that list, and they don't all call everything the same thing. They don't all pick the exact same things. So it can take a little bit of creative thought to figure out what people might have called one that is similar to the property that you are looking at right now, and maybe a little trial and error in order to find some of them. Since I want more than 13 for today, I'm going to go up here to the top, click on 2-story, which unselects all the others, and then I'm going to, with this finger right here, hold down my control key and unselect the last one, and now I'm back to 39 matches, because we're just doing this for fake, and I want to make sure I have enough properties to show you how to handle the properties when we get into the search. So there's a general search, and I've got some properties down there. And let's assume I'm happy with the search results. So I'm going to go ahead and click on search results, the results button, and there they all are. And so I have some actives, I have some pendings, I have some closeds, and I actually have no expireds, because quite honestly, there haven't been a lot of expireds in the market that we're experiencing right now, even with the conditions that we are under right now. Now, I do need more actives, don't I? Here's a simple little trick. I'm going to go back to criteria, and I am going to add area 36, because it is also Hanover County. And that brings me up to more matches down here. And click on results. And there I have some more actives. So you may still have to go back and adjust your criteria to see what it is that you're looking for. I got 1 expired. I don't think I'm going to get enough expireds to use expireds, but here's a little trick that always works with expireds if I want to get more and I don't have enough. This would work with pendings, and this would also work with solds. Since they are limited by a time frame, and I now have 58 matches down here. If I go to expired and I make this time frame longer, let's try making it 300. Notice my match numbers went up. Because it was the only change that I made, I know that all of the new properties are expireds. I still might not want to use them. They're pretty far back. But if I go to results now, I now have expireds. I could have done the same things with pendings. I could have done the same thing with closed or sold if I were looking for more. So you want at least 3 of each. You want them to be as similar as you can. You want them to be in a reasonable distance or similar market to your subject property, and you want them within a reasonable time frame. Any questions about that? All righty, then the next step is entirely up to you. I can't tell you how you should do the next step. I can only show you some practical ways of doing it. Because the next step is to select from this list what you want to use as comparable properties. Only way to do that is to look at them, and nothing makes this more your opinion of the value of the property than what properties you selected as comparables and why you selected them. And there are, what, 6 or 7 people here and live in this class. And I can tell you right now, if I had each of you look at this list and pick your comps, no 2 of you would pick the same properties. That's why it's your opinion. But there are some techniques you can use to make the task a little smoother. First of all, you can literally look at the list itself, because one of the things I tend to do is, since I didn't search by subdivision, if I saw some here that were actually in the same subdivision or an immediately neighboring subdivision, I would probably tend to want to pick that one above some of the others. The other way you're likely to do it is to go to one of the reports, and we'll go to the agent long report and actually look at them. And this is really where it becomes your opinion. You look at the property and you check the box here if you want to use it or not. And this takes a little bit of time. I suggest a nice cup of coffee, a small box of Krispy Kreme donuts with the phone off the hook, and just take your time going through here, picking your comps. And so you can look at this. By now, you may not even need to read a whole lot of the details on the property because you did your research so well and you did your search so well. You can look for similarities, but very often this is the point at where you look at the picture and you get a feel from the picture for whether it's similar enough to use as a comp and whether it's not. So this one here I might not use, and so I'll click on next and go to the next one. This one I like. I'm just making this up, by the way. We're just selecting properties now. And so I check it off and go on next. Oh, I know this one. It's one of our listings. Pretty cool. I'm not going to compete with one of our listings. Yeah, one of our listings. But this one actually, I do like this one, so I'll check this one. And then just go through the list, decide the ones that you want to use as comparables, and check them off. Any quick questions about selecting your comps?
I ran into a situation recently, John, where the neighborhood slash subdivision was spelled wrong.
Yeah.
Two neighborhoods, the name similar. One had Carrie, one had Gary, and I ran the comps and it didn't pull up. And, usually I would use the map. This particular time I didn't, so I missed two.
Yeah, and that's why the map is often good, especially in an area that might be common. Now, it's interesting you say that because usually that's caused by the fact that our older MLS systems, and I'm talking 15 years ago, you didn't pick subdivisions from a list, you typed them in manually, and you can guess what the result of that was. And that's where a lot of those wrong subdivision names came from, because they can't be removed from the list in our current MLS because those listings are still in our database and people can go back that far and look for properties for other purposes. And so, yeah, that's where that comes from. And that's why if you're aware of that being an issue, then you want to use a map search. And in fact, if you've done your search based on subdivision and all of that, and you still need more comps, maybe the next thing to try adding to your criteria is to take subdivision out and do a map search around the area to see if you're missing area. Good question, Terrell. Anybody else have a question? All right, then. I'm going to go back to single line because I don't want to spend a lot of time. We're doing this as a summary. And I need at least 3 of each. So I've got 3 here. And I need some expireds here. Let's see, Cypress Tree is in my neighborhood, so I'll take that. And I don't know too much about some of these other properties, but I do like the name Wahoo, so we'll pick that one. And Kenmore, I have a Kenmore washer. And then we need some pendings. I have no idea who Colonel Crump was. I'd like to find that out someday. I know McClellan was a famous general, and I know somebody named Marie. So I'm just making this up as I go along. I just need 3 properties. You would obviously spend a great deal more time seriously looking at these and picking the ones you want. And so I've got 3 of each selected. The next thing I'm going to do, though, is I am going to go down here. Oh, no, I make a suggestion here for you. I'm sorry. I would actually print this list out and save it on paper and stick it in my file folder. If I get halfway through my CMA and realize I'm really not happy with one of my comps, then I can go back to this list and swap in a different comp if I need to. So I do suggest printing this list out before you go to the next step and sticking it in your file folder in case you need it later. So now I'm going to go down here to refine. And under refine, I have the choice of narrow or discard. Discard will get rid of the ones I checked. Narrow will get rid of the ones I didn't check. So I'm going to narrow this. And now I can, first of all, take another look and make sure I checked the right check boxes. But this also lets me do the next thing I think you should print. These are the comps I'm assuming I'm going to use to tell my seller what I think their house is worth. Can I suggest that you print all of these out in their entirety with the tax records possibly, and put them in your file folder so that when you get to your appointment, whether it's at their house or in your office, and they start asking you questions about one of these comparables, you don't have to go back and look it up. You can say, I don't recall that information off the top of my head, but you can have your folder right there and say, let me look that up. Because if you have to go get another piece of information in the middle of your appointment, you're probably not getting the listing today. So I'd print out the full list in case I need it later. I'd print out the full information on all my comps so that I'm prepared to answer any questions my seller might ask me about those properties. Any questions about any of that? Pretty cool. So we've researched the property. We've researched the neighborhood. We have some market statistics that we can rely on and we understand. We've selected our comps. We've saved all the information on our research. Our file folder is now at least an inch thick, which is very impressive when you carry it into the room. And we are now ready to start our actual CMA report process. Now, I'm going to go back here to actions. And here are all of the big blue bottom buttons. Here is where the CMA wizard is located. Before we do that, I want to point out there's also a quick CMA. I always hit that button, even if I'm not going to use it. It's a good general summary of the information that I have pulled together. And if I click on it here, you can see it's a little 1 or 2 page report that I can either keep for myself as part of my research, or I can make it part of my CMA report. It might make a good summary, sum up, and go for the listing part of your presentation, you know, your closing document. So study it over and look at it and see what information it provides you with. This one here, of course, I just arbitrarily selected properties, but it can be useful. And of course, you can print it. But what's interesting about it is you just left Matrix and you have now opened this up on your screen as a PDF. And by the way, can you all see this report?
Yeah.
Showing on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, because Zoom doesn't always do that for me. If I go back here in Matrix, I might like to email this report to somebody. And of course, since it opens in Adobe Reader, you could save it as an attachment and email it that way. But if you wanted to email the quick CMA from right inside Matrix, if you go over here to print and you scroll down here to quick CMA, here's where you can email any of these reports as a PDF. So for some reason, the way you email the quick CMA is you go to print to email it instead of going to email. But now you know. Any questions about that? I'm going to go back to results. So there's the quick CMA. I'm going to go into the CMA wizard now. Any quick questions about anything that we've talked about, or I'll admit I talked about so far? All righty, then let's go into the CMA wizard. We'll walk through the wizard. We're not going to poke into every nook and cranny today, but I am going to go through the process. Feel free to stop me where you have questions or if you've used it before and have gotten stuck. So the first thing that we need to do is assign a contact. Obviously, this is going to somebody. And if you've had contacts in Matrix before, you can drop down this list and all of your contacts show up here. As you can see, I only work for very famous, very fictional, or sometimes old dead people, because I only do this for training purposes. But you want to create a new contact, and they get saved in your contact database here in Matrix. There are two things that you perform in Matrix where you put in a contact and they are automatically saved under my Matrix under contacts. One is when you do the CMA wizard, and the other is whenever you do an auto email, and they are automatically saved and you can recover their information in here anytime that you need it. So we're going to create a new contact today, and since we had a theme song, some of you may be old enough to know who Graham, I think I got that right, Nash was. And if you don't, rewind the video later and listen to the theme song, see if it reminds you. And you have to put in an email, because remember, anything that's yellow in Matrix is required. So I will do CSNY. I'm making this up. And when you do your fake CMAs, please use your own email address. Don't do a fake one for some famous person and make up a fake email address for them. If it turns out to actually be theirs, they're going to be very frightened by you. So one of the things I suggest in all your practice, auto emails, doing CMAs, is you probably have more than one email address. So make believe you're your own customer, your own client, your own seller, and use your hometown email as your agent side and use your personal email as if you were the customer, and send stuff to yourself and see what it is that your customer gets, so that when they call you and ask you questions, you'll know what they're looking at. Just some good advice. And you can add lots of other information here if you want to, but the main thing that you need is the name and the email address. Click on save, and you could put some description down here in case you forget who Graham Nash is, who, by the way, is the Nash of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, for those of you who are old enough to remember that. And so your entire CMA wizard process is just going through the tabs across the top. So it's pretty straightforward, but I'm going to give you some tips and information that'll make the process smoother for you. So the first tab that comes next is pages. And over here on the left are all the pages that I have in my CMA. Here's your next homework assignment if you haven't already done it. These are all the pages that you have available to be in your CMA, and there's a lot of them. You can have a CMA report, presentation report, come out of this that is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I think the most I ever was able to produce was almost 60 pages, depending upon which of these you want to use. What you can't do, unfortunately, is click on them and see what they look like before you use them. So if you've never done it, what I want you to do is take all of these pages and highlight them and move them over here to this side and do a fake CMA, maybe even print it out. Get a cup of coffee, another box of Krispy Kreme donuts, which is a realtor tradition anyway, and flip through that report and decide which pages you would like to use and which pages you don't want to use. Then go back in here again and Move all of the pages that you now have over here back over to this side. You do it simply by selecting one, and you can cross it out here. And then click on Set as Default. And those will be the pages that show up in your CMA when you use this wizard from then on. It takes a little bit of time to do that, but you only have to do it once. And from then on, you know exactly what pages you're going to get. You can rearrange them in the order you want using these arrows. And you can also add up to 5 of your own custom pages as PDFs. You have Manage Custom Pages here. And if you click here, just like you can upload pictures and you can upload documents to your listing, you can upload some of your own pages as PDFs, up to 5 of them, and use them in your CMA as well. So that's how you set up your pages. Any questions about that? All right. And by the way, this is where you make the CMA report your very own and make it different from everyone else's who uses Matrix CMA. The next tab is your subject property. And this is one of the advantages that I find in the Matrix CMA over some of the other products out there, like Toolkit, is that you can bring your subject property into your CMA and have it right here in the front of your report. You can do it 4 ways. You can type in all the subject property information fields manually, just like adding a listing to it. You have your fields and you put the information in. If I click there, you can see there's all of the fields and you just fill them out. You can even add a photo. You know, you drove by 2 hours ago without the homeowner seeing you and snapped a shot with your smartphone, and you can upload that picture and have it appear on your cover page of your CMA. You can also add your own remarks here, talking about the property and what you think are some of the pluses and minuses compared to the market. And that's one way of doing it. You can fill it in from a search. If you know the MLS number of the property and you have that information, if I type in the MLS number here and click on fill, it'll bring the information over from the MLS. 2 cautions I'll give you about doing this. If the property was in the MLS a while ago, for example, one of our agents did this and the listing was all the way back in 2007, some of the information on the property could have changed since then. So you want to look carefully at the information that you're bringing over. And also, when you bring information over from the MLS, one of the fields that comes over is the remarks section, which was written by the last agent who listed that property, which you might want to look at because you may or may not agree with what that agent thought about the property. So always especially take a look at the remarks to make sure you aren't buying something into your process that you didn't mean to have. You can also run a search for the property and find the property if you didn't get the MLS number before this, which you probably did. And you can also bring information over from the tax record. You can't do both. You can't bring information over from the MLS and the tax record, but one or the other. Let's go to the manual part, and I'm just going to put in some general information here. Street number will be 1600. Street name, I'll make Pennsylvania Avenue. Well, actually, no, Avenue belongs in Suffolk. I always list the White House because it does change hands every 4 years or so anyway. And so you just go through and put in the information that you have. I'm going to go with 4 bedrooms because that's what my search was. Sorry, I didn't do that right. Total baths, we're going to do 2. Bedrooms, I'm going to do 4. And number of levels, parking, acres, we'll do finished square feet, I'll make 2,000. And I'm just, like I said, creating a fake CMA. You do have the ability to add some custom fields down here. You can pick fields that are in the MLS that aren't already here if they happen to be important to your CMA. Only pick fields that are big, important fields, not small details fields, because you want to keep your adjustments as broad as possible. I can also add a field that is not here on the list, so that if for example, my house, I have a shed, but my house doesn't just have a shed. It has a 12 by 20 foot man shed with electricity and cable TV. So it's not just a shed. I might add shed. But seriously, if I were doing my house, the one I would add is street location. And I will click on OK. And my house backs onto Lee Davis Road. How many of you know Lee Davis Road?
Yes.
Does the fact that my house backs onto Lee Davis Road probably have an impact on the value of my house compared to others?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it probably does. At least for me it does, and I'm from New Jersey. If I can't hear traffic, I can't go to sleep. But for a lot of people, that might matter. So I'm going to say, oops, I misspelled street location, didn't I? There we go. And I'm going to say my street location is busy. So that's something I might want to make some sort of an adjustment for when I do my CMA. And then I can add a picture. If I took a picture of it, I'm going to click on Browse here and see if I have a picture that I can use. Let's see. Oh, I'm not on my own computer, am I? So I'm going to have to do this differently. I forgot I'm not on my computer. So let's see if I can pull a picture from here. There you go. And that actually is my house from back when I bought it. So I've added a picture, and this will show up on my CMA. Pretty cool. Any questions about putting in the subject property? You want as much detail as you can put in here as far as the fields go, but if you add fields, they should only be fields that seriously matter to the value. Make sense? So now we'll go to the next one. And this is where the cover is going to be. And I can put in the address if I want it to appear on the cover. In this case, it was 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I can even put in the phone number if I want to, although why I'd want the phone number of the seller to appear on the cover of his own CMA, I've never figured out. I have an agent picture in here. It's a good thing to do. If you haven't added your agent picture to the MLS, where you do that is you go to Input and you go to, I'm not going to click on it now because I don't want to leave here, but where you can change your password, there's also a place to add your agent photo. You can also click on Edit My Information here, and it should allow you to not only put your picture in, but also make sure your information is here, because unlike putting your client's phone number on here, which they already know, hopefully, you do want them to have your information, and it shows up right on the cover. Any cover questions? All right. That is one of the pages, by the way, that you want to select when you set up your pages. Now we'll go to comparables. And if I hadn't already selected my comparables, if I had gone directly to CMA, then down here at the bottom, there would be a place where I could search and find my comparables now. As I said, I like to find my comparables first, and I can now look at them, make sure I'm happy with them. I'm going to select them all. I just always like to do that to make sure they all come over. Down here at the bottom, I have some choices. I can remove some of them. Remember I said save that whole list? Maybe you get to this place and you have second thoughts about one of your comps. So I could pick the one I don't want to use and remove it, go to add from listings, type in the MLS number I'm going to use instead, and add it and have just the comps that I want to use. The other valuable use of this page is a month from now, it hasn't sold. Instead of creating a whole new CMA, I could go in and look for new properties that have been listed and sold, update my comps here, and create an adjusted CMA to go and talk to the person about adjusting their market parameters to conform to current market conditions, which is way cooler than saying price reduction, in my opinion. So you might want to write that down. No, I'm only kidding. But I can also rearrange the order of them. That's what these icons all on the left are doing. And you want to do that. You want to, especially if you're going to sit with your seller and talk about each comparable a little bit, you want to put them in the order that you want to talk about them in when you talk to your customer. So I have the comps I want. I'm ready to go to the next step unless someone has a question. And you all look like you're doing just fine. So map, well, map is just map. And
John, real quick.
the location of the properties, yes. Did someone have a question?
Yeah, how will we put them in order? You mentioned,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, that's what this does here. If I hold that down, I can drag them up and down.
Okay.
So good question. So map shows the location of them. It does color code them, which I do like. So by the different statuses, it didn't used to do that. So this is actually usually a pretty good map. Of course, I didn't select comps that I would have actually used. They're a little farther apart in time and such. And so I can include this map in my CMA to show her where her properties are in relationship to the comparables. Adjustments. This is the part of the full class that I spend a great deal of time on. It's the part of the class that everybody wants the most information on. We don't have time to go over it in that much detail today. There are lots of ways that you can get information for making adjustments. There are two methods of doing them on here, and I will show you that and show you how it works. But for most of you, especially if you're still relatively new to the business or getting started, you're probably not going to make numeric adjustments. You're probably going to look at the differences between the subject property and the comps and say, Mr. Nash, your house has this. Most of these comps don't, especially this comp doesn't. So that makes your house worth probably a little more than this house based on that. On the other hand, this house has this and your house doesn't. So that probably makes your house a little bit less in terms of price than this house. And you might even trade some of those differences off rather than assign actual numeric values to them like appraisers do. You can assign numeric values to them, but you have to know places where you can get actual numeric values. And that's something we can talk about in another class at another time. There are sources for that information. None of them are easy or automatic, and actually some of them are expensive. You can also talk to some agents in your office who are experienced and ask them to give you an idea of what they think might be some good numbers to use for some of the important differences. But there are two ways of actually making adjustments in here if you're going to use actual numbers. Detail mode, this says view in detail mode. This button can be confusing because you tend to think this must be detail mode, but we are not in detail mode. This takes us to detail mode. So if I click on this, what this does is it shows the subject property in the first column, the comp in the next column, and it allows me a place over here to make distinctions. So I don't have all the data that I might want in here, but let's say this has 2 full baths and maybe the subject property only had 1. So I could go over here and type a difference. You are always adjusting the comp to match the subject property. You are always adjusting the comp to match the subject property. So if this had 1 full bath in here and this has 2 full baths, I'm going to subtract $5,000. Now, I'm not saying a bath is worth $5,000. I'm not using any real numbers because you're not going to say to somebody, oh, John Hicks told me that's what it was worth. It's smart for that. But what I wanted you to notice is that by putting the minus sign, it did the math down here for me. And so I can make adjustments as we go through this and for all of the differences that I can see, including the remarks and so forth. And then I can go to the next one and the next one and the next one. Like I said, most of the time, most agents in our market, especially newer ones, just make a list of the differences to talk about and say this is a plus, this is a minus, and keep them general. The other way you can do this, this says view in single line mode, and what this does is instead of going property by property, I can go field by field. And so if I scroll over here, you can see, for example, well, all of mine have 4 bedrooms, but here I have bath differences. And so if I had assigned a certain number to this difference, I might just repeat this number going down here to all of the properties instead of looking at each property individually. Which way should you do it? Whichever way is easier for you, and you're not going to worry about it until you're ready to do actual numerical changes. Person in your office who can most help you with this is your sales manager. If you need to do numerical changes, or if you need some help talking about how much of a difference should make. Having said all of that, any quick questions about how you handle adjustments? Was that clear enough, or was I very, very cloudy?
If we went back, I think you put the bath there for 5,000, right? Because we're adjusting the.
And I made it a minus because the comp had more baths. Remember, I assumed there was only 1 bath in the subject property. I didn't fill that field in when I was quickly adding our subject property. So I subtracted the bath from the subject property. Think of it this way: if you're going to adjust the adjust the comp to match the subject property, then when you look at the comp and it has an extra bath, you're going to send your contractor over there and have them rip out that bath. So now it matches the subject property. When they ripped out the bath, which way did the value go? It went down, so you make it a minus.
So did you put -5? I looked away for a second. -5, we just type 5 in and it automatically subtracts.
No, it's the other way around. You put -5 in. If I wanted to add something here, and let's see if I have something on this one I can add. Well, let's say my subject property is in a much better subdivision than Cypress Tree. So I'm going to send my contractors over. They're going to pick up Cypress Tree and move it into my subdivision, probably illegally in this case. And now it's gotten to a better location. So which way does the value go?
Go upwards.
Goes up. So I just type that number in here. In this case, I'll say 5,000, and it automatically adds it. So if I put a minus, it'll appear in parentheses, and it'll subtract it. If I just type the numbers, it'll be a plus, and it'll just add it. So does that answer your excellent question, Terrell?
It does. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a good question. Any other questions? All right, then. We've done pretty much all the hard parts. We're literally almost done. The next page is very, 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 very important. You just created a file folder that's 2 inches thick. You just created a 48-page listing report that you went through in excruciating detail with your customer because that's just how you like to do it. This is the page they've been waiting for 45 minutes for you to finally get to. So how important is this page?
Very.
It's very important. Let's take a look at it and see how you should use it. First of all, this top part here is only for your information. It doesn't show in the report. This is a quick summary of information on the comps you selected and what they were in and of themselves and what they looked like after you made all your adjustments. And this is to help you in your mind narrow down your opinion of value to some actual numbers. Same with additional analysis. The two things that appear on this page are the things that go in this box and the things that go into this box. This says you can fit 250 characters in this box. This says you can fit 1,000 characters in this box. Do you know how many you should put in each box?
Every character.
Every character you can. If I go here and I type in here, list price, 235, oops, got to put a dollar sign in because it looks more impressive, 235,000 and sold price 233,000. I typed that right? Well, I forgot the dollar sign, but we'll get that in there. Here's what's going to happen if I do that. I am going to have the most important piece of paper in this entire thing that they were waiting for me to get to, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and it's just going to have those 6 items, those 6 words in about a 10-point font, and the rest is going to be blank. Very unimpressive. So you want to fill it out. Now, what I always recommend is put your basic wording into a Word document, keep it on your computer somewhere, maybe right on your desktop, so that you can just copy and paste it over and then edit it for this particular property. So in the first box, you might say something like, based on my investigation of the market and the research I did on your property, and looking at some of the properties that have been listed, are currently available, and properties that have recently sold that are similar, it is my opinion that the list price best suited for your property would be blank, and that it will probably sell at around blank. I'm just making that up, but some sort of sentence like that. In the notes section, you could put in information about the market in general, what's going on out there. You could put in information about why Hometown is the finest real estate agent on the face of the planet, and that you are the best looking real estate agent in all of Hometown. Something in there to fill up that space. And like I said, if you put it into a Word document and save it, you can just copy and paste it over and then just make a few changes to personalize it for this CMA. But that's the importance of this page. Y'all agree?
Yes. Agree.
Alrighty, so we have actually gone through the entire wizard. And if you do a couple of them for fake, it gets old and quick really fast. Any last quick questions? All right, then let's finish it. Now you have 2 buttons left up here. You have finish and you have a save button. I always click on the save button. You don't have to. There is an auto save in here, but I am a belt and suspenders kind of person, and I don't want to get into the next step and find out for some reason auto save didn't auto save. So I always do that. And now we'll click on finish. and you can see the summary of my report. You can see the picture that I used and the pages, and I can do two things with it at this point. I can view it and I can email it. I'm going to click on View CMA, and this will take a minute to come up because it's compiling all those pages. In fact, I probably should have clicked on it immediately. Now I have to talk a little bit while we are waiting for it to come up, but it's actually quite a nice looking report. In fact, it'll probably look nicer on my screen than it may on yours as it comes over. Still generating a CMA. Wow, this is a good CMA because it's doing a lot of work. While we're waiting for it to come up, has anybody used this in an actual presentation before? You have, Brenda. How'd it go?
We're okay. We're okay.
Yeah. Does it increase your confidence to have something like this in your hands when you sit down with your customer?
Most definitely.
Yeah,
I work
most
better from
definitely.
script.
Right. It's as good for you as it is for them, really. So here's the cover page. It's a nice looking cover page. And as I scroll through this, you can see all of the pages that are here in my report. Here's one of the custom pages I added. And some of this stuff is traditional stuff, the importance of pricing it right. I am scrolling down to one particular section because I want to make you aware of it. There's a summary of the comparables. There's a market share report, a couple of them that we've done in the past. And if you don't have those, I have some. Pop me an email and I'll send it to you. But what I'm looking for is something called the Pro Report. There's the adjustment pages that I did with all of the comps. The other thing that I could have done is I could have actually printed out those comps and inserted them in here as well, either in customer short or brief. If I wanted more information on them as part of the report, you can really make this thing huge if you want to. Pricing graph. Here's the CMA Pro report. You all see this? This is one of your selections when you set up your pages. What you want to realize is actually about a 9 to 12 page report in and of itself. And you can either use the whole report in your CMA. I like it. I would use it. It comes with all of these pages. They say CMA Pro report up here at the top. Or not. You can't select individual pages from it unless you wait until after you've printed it and just slip those pages out. But I think you will like it. And as you can see, this is quite a good looking report. You want to get familiar with it so that you, as you are presenting it to somebody, you know what the follow-up pages are going to be. And I suggest on at least one of your practice reports, sit down with somebody. Another agent perhaps, or your spouse or best friend or somebody, and go through it like it's a real customer so that you can get the feel, so that the first time you sit down and use it as a presentation report is not the first time you're sitting in front of a customer. You want to be a little smoother than that. So that's the CMA Wizard. That's how it works. If you do a handful of them, you will be just fine. If you go up here to My Matrix and My CMAs, here are where all your CMAs live, so you can go back to them and get them. If you click on the little downward pointing arrow in front of them, these are the things you can do with that CMA. You can edit it. Like I said earlier, you can use it to go back for your price adjustment. And of course, if they did list with someone else, you can click here and delete it. It only gives you about 4 seconds of satisfaction, but if you frown while you do it, you'll probably feel a little better. Any last quick questions about our CMA? Well, then thank you very much for being here. You were an asset and a good part of putting this together. And I will make sure that the link to this recording goes out. Let me turn off the recording here.